Okay, we have the second in the series of The Fool's Journey. Thank you so much for tuning into these videos. I hope that you're learning along with me and that you get something out of this that helps you deepen your knowledge and your practice with the tarot, or helps you understand the videos and the content that I'm posting on this channel. So, like I said, this is the second video in the series, which means we are on card number 1, and that is the Magician. I said in the prior episodes that this is the Robert Hansen's Tarot, and I'll be using this mainly going forward for the reference in this tarot study. This deck came out in the 1980s, so that explains kind of the weird, cartoonish, Jim Henson-y type of image in this card. But also it's a medieval inspired artistic expression of the tarot, so there's some symbolisms in here that are definitely medieval. Like I said, this is the Magician. And I have also here a couple of cards from the Twin Tarot, which show the Magician in the light polarity, light aspect of the Magician. And this would be the negative polarity, or the shadow aspect of the Magician. What I'm going to do is use this complete book of tarot, the guide by Anthony Lewis, to give you some information on these cards, and then I'm going to give you my intuitive interpretations based on my own study of occult symbolisms and really make some connections for you guys. What's nice about this guide is that it does have an additional image of the Magician for us to reference. It's not in color, but the symbolism is still there. So let me see if I can. Okay. Now, the key phrase when pulling the card of the Magician is "as above, so below." And in another key thing to think about this Magician is, think of it as a person who is a juggler, somebody who's juggling something. Now, let's see what else this has to say about the Magician. It says that this card is represented by Mercury, the messenger of the gods. So when this card comes out in a reading, we're going to associate it with Virgo and Gemini. Both are ruled by Mercury, which means this card is also connected to the element of air. So if this card comes out in a reading, I would ask the person if they are a Gemini or a Virgo, and if not, if they're dealing with a Gemini and a Virgo, and if not, then are they dealing with another air sign, not a Gemini, perhaps a Libra, somebody else. So let's see. In the archetypes and myths associated with the Magician, you'll see, again, the juggler, the con artist, Hermes, and Thoth. They also associate this with Merlin. Now, in historical reference to the tarot, going back to 1888, this card would have been the juggler, and it would represent will, willpower, and dexterity. When this card is shown in the reverse, it would mean that they are using will applied to evil ends, a weakness of will, their cunning, or their knavishness. So not a good person in the reverse, definitely a deceiver. In the Rider-Waite, in the upright, this card would talk about diplomacy, skill, subtlety, sickness, pain, loss, disasters, snares of the enemies, self-confidence, will, and if the person in the reading is a male, you might want to just assume that this is them. When it comes out in the reverse with the Rider-Waite, they tell you that this could be a physician. It might have something to do with mental disease, disgrace, and disquiet of the mind, which would make sense as connected to Mercury. And Mercury is all about the mental and the thought process. So in the Golden Dawn, this card would come to mean something about magic, occult wisdoms, adaptability, cunning, craft, and skill. Again, the keywords that we're associating with the magician are going to be skill, mastery, cleverness, intelligence, cunning, everything associated with the intellectual Mercury placement. We also have a lot of self-confidence, determination, purpose, assertiveness, focusing intentions, dexterity and ability to juggle, strength of will, striving for power, transforming ideas into reality. So if this card is coming out based on the cards around it, you might be kind of implied to think that this is something somebody's thinking about putting into manifestation. This also talks about somebody who's able to control natural forces and abilities to manipulate the physical world. Again, the saying is as above, so below. Now, in the reverse or the negative polarity, like I said, some of these decks, you don't read them in reverse. They have, like, for example, this one is a positive and a negative. This one you can read in reverse. That's why I'm using mostly this one to review the tarot. Other decks I have, you absolutely should not read them in reverse. It doesn't make sense to reverse the card. It doesn't really have the same message in different decks. So in the negative polarity, this magician would represent illusions, parlor tricks, deceits, sleight of hands, trickery, hesitancy, impotence, lack of self-confidence, confusion of their purpose, and the ill use of one's skills. A trickster, a con artist, a stage magician, a quack doctor, a swindler, or a thief. Interesting. So, when in the upright, the magician symbolizes a person of great willpower who has mastered the knowledge and skills needed to achieve their goals. As depicted in the classic tarot, the magician can access the cosmos above and the earth below, as he juggles the four elements to manifest their desire. Ruled by the planet Mercury, the magician is a gifted communicator of intense mental focus who can translate ideas into effective action. Themes related to the magician have to do with directing one's will and focusing one's consciousness to manipulate physical reality. When in the reverse, the magician may be using their willpower, knowledge, or skills for less than honorable purposes. An ill-dignified magician may be engaged in deception, manipulation, or the misuse of power. They may be a weak-willed or lacking in confidence person and thus fail to use their communication skills in a productive manner. When the magician appears reversed in a reading, it's wise to explore what's preventing the person from maintaining their mental focus and what will enable them to act like a magician in their own life. Interesting. This guide is very helpful, and I'm going to now give you some personal intuitive interpretations of the cards and connect the symbology for you. So even if you don't have these decks, these are symbols that you'll see throughout different tarot iterations in traditional styled cards. So here we have the traditional magician. The most important factor to pay attention to that you'll see throughout many different cards is the wand and the position of the arms. This is as above, so below. This also means as above, so below. So sometimes you'll see this just in the hand position, but he has a silver rod in his hand connecting to the cosmos, and he's wearing gold around his wrist. He's grounding it. And he also has gold around his third eye and around his heart chakra in this particular card version. Another symbol you'll see a lot in association with the magician is the infinity symbol. And this is about being totally in balance, and flow. Now, another thing that absolutely will be in many of these cards is having all four elements of the tarot on the table in front of the magician. You have the pentacle, which represents the material. You have the cup, which represents the emotional. You have the sword, which represents the mental and intellectual. And then you have the wand, which represents the desire and the will. So the magician has accumulated all of the tools needed to manifest and create anything that they want. They have, they've unlocked that certain level of skill. And they are channeling from above to create into below. This is a symbol that you'll see throughout many different versions. The other thing that you'll have to pay attention to is the cloak is very important. Um, Also, I would say that what's also important is the roses. There's typically red and white roses in these cards, and white roses are always associated with symbology of purity and innocence and just like good-heartedness. And the red would symbolize passion, and it also is connected to the root chakra. So we have the crown and the root chakra kind of represented in these flowers, and it's also why we see the infinity symbol here. It's about the connection throughout the magician, not just in the physical, but in the spiritual and in the energetic as well. So you'll also see in this card that he's wearing a snake around his belt loop. And it's representative of an Ouroboros. And if you're not familiar with it, it's the snake that eats its own tail. It's another representation of an infinite loop that happens. And it's talking about how things happen in cycles, and they happen in the ethereal and the spiritual before they catch up into the material and the physical. All right, so let me compare now. Let me show you these two side by side. I think you can kind of get a really good idea of the symbology being side by side here. Another thing I want to point out to you, especially in this one, is do you see this gold aura in the background, this halo? Whenever you see symbolism of somebody having either like a gold halo or an aura or like a background behind them, this is kind of to let you know intuitively that they're receiving, it's either protection from above or that they are receiving guidance, like a radio wave from the other side, from beyond. And then what I want to point out in this particular card is we have purple, which is represented with the crown and the third eye chakra. It's like those two connected. And then you have the green with the heart chakra here. So this is about, like these balances of like mind, body, soul type of thing. Again, this purple, this is very divine. It's very royal. These colors are used to signify a person of great dignity. And then what I want to point out in this is his wand is gold and silver. In the other one, it was just silver, but he was wearing gold. The other thing you need to see in this card is the orderliness of these items here, right? It's everything's lined up. He's got the elements and they're like, he's mastered them. And then again, we see the symbology of the roses down here. And we see the energy going through, it's flowing, right? And it's beautiful. And that's represented here as well. Because in the negative polarity side by side, look at these. The distortion in the field. Do you see? This wand is only gold. There's no silver. So this means that they're not the alchemists. They don't have the ability to transmute effectively. And that's why you see the just fire of willpower coming out of here. This is a magician that is using their will negatively. And this hand position is something that is forcing, whereas this one is a receiving and giving position. Do you see how they're no longer in this open posture that allows them to divine? And that's exactly why this field has become distorted back here. The other thing I want to point out is that everything is disheveled here now. The cup is spilled over. There's no roses anymore in this picture either. it's lacking in the crown and the root balance chakras. We also go from like wearing a light shirt to a dark shirt, and the cape goes from purple to red, red being in the root chakra. And honestly, this would be, if there was somebody in the reading that is represented by this person, they most likely have an imbalance in their root chakra. And that's what this is kind of trying to intuitively get you to look at and pay attention to the color red, because it would tell you that there's something unstable about this person. They're too in their intellectual, and they need to balance into their root chakra by grounding themselves. And anytime you see electrical currents happening like this that are not grounded, what happens? Yeah, you have these massive sparks, and it's not a positive experience. So I think that pretty much covers what I need to give you guys guidance on what I see in the cards anyway. Make sure you leave a comment if there's something else here that you feel is traditionally represented throughout all cards of the Magician that I may have overlooked or I'm not aware of yet. I would really appreciate the feedback, and I hope this has been enlightening and helpful to you guys. Thanks so much for the support.